Aloha, DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation Daily at Large. I think is what Connor and I call it when we're filling in for Brandon. If you're typically not with us on Thursday nights, it's called DawgNation at Large because most of it is Georgia football driven, but the at large part means that we can talk about essentially anything we want, kind of like what Brandon Adams does in his R.S. Andrews cool down. It might start at one point, but you never know where it's going to end up, and that's kind of what our show is. So I want to go ahead and bring in my good friend Connor Riley. We've both got our Masters green on today in honor of the official start of the Masters, a tradition like no other. It's crazy because, I'm not a big fan of golf. And I've never even been to the Masters, but I love the idea of the event. Now, you've been yourself, though, right?
Kaylee coming out with way too much energy today here on Masters Thursday. We're just looking to go out there and enjoy what this competition brings and all that it means for Georgia. But I think the big thing and the big reason that this tournament means so much, I think that there is an aspect of showing what Georgia has to offer, not just to the golf public or the golf viewing, but the entire world, as I think everyone tunes in and recognizes the iconicness of the Masters tournament.
Wow, Connor's showing that he can do just a little bit of everything right off the bat. I will say maybe the energy is here because I have had a little bit more caffeine than usual this morning. I woke up at 5 and I couldn't go back to sleep. And so I actually sat on my couch and I watched all the videos from the Masters Par 3 when they get the chance to play with their kids. And I don't know what it is about seeing the human side of golf, but I'm on my couch. It's 5:30 in the morning and I have tears in my eyes from watching these guys play with their kids. I don't know what it is, but it's so special to me.
Yeah, golf is, I think, our most naked of sports. And for anyone, whether you've played or not, just going out there and experiencing. And as you mentioned, Kayla, I got a chance to go to the Masters last year, and you see just how narrow the tee shot is on 18. And you think of everyone that's come through there with a shot to win the Masters on Sunday, just the pressure that builds with that, having to deal with that. I think it makes the humanness of golf stand out all the more.
And it's another year for Rory to compete the Grand Slam, so my bets are on him. And I do want to say one other thing off the top, even if you haven't been with us on Thursday nights over the last year. Today is actually the 1-year anniversary of the first ever episode of DawgNation at Large. I went back and watched it this morning, so to see how far we've come and to know that we had an idea and we knew sort of where we wanted to go, but to see where it's ended up, it was better than I could imagine. I'm not going to give Connor the chance to follow up because I need a second to stop being sappy, but I'm very thankful for hopefully what is another year of DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
And it only took us a year for me to get Connor to color coordinate with me, so tells you that we're taking a step in the right direction. But we'll show you what we've got going on here on today's episode of DawgNation at Large. It's all going to be G-Day focused. We've got 2 days left at this point, so who are the guys that G-Day can benefit the most? And then in our Dog Bites segment, we'll go through the newcomers that we're most excited to watch, whether that be freshmen or transfers. Who are the guys that we're just finally excited to see take the field at Sanford Stadium? And we'll follow it up with our favorite tweets of the week. And then in honor of the first anniversary of DawgNation at Large, our first ever fun segment that we did together last year was the G-Day fantasy draft, and Connor actually won that. So this year I'm coming back for vengeance. I have done my research and there's no way that I'm losing this year. So I'm excited to get to that. But we'll go ahead and start with this. So this idea came about of who G-Day can benefit when I had the chance to talk to Jake Fromm, and you'll be able to see that interview in the DawgNation Game Day show on Saturday. But I was asking him you can only replicate so much of a real game during G-Day. So who are the players that it actually helps? And it's not the players that have already been established or already have their position solidified. It's the guys that are competing for a spot. So you'll kind of see that as we go through each of the players.
Yeah, in G-Day, again, we talk so much about position battles and what to expect. None of this is really going to be decided this Saturday when Georgia takes the field at G-Day. You look for certain players and who stands out and who maybe makes a big impression, who maybe perhaps validates some of the strong springs that they've had. And I say this every year, what we see on Saturday shouldn't invalidate or overrule what happened in the previous 14 practices. Saturday is still just a spring practice, and while there will be fans in the stands and there will be, I think, a greater attention paid to what guys do there, the list is very long of players that have had standout G-Day performances and then not really been able to replicate and carry that over into the season. And so as we sit here today, again, I think what guys have already accomplished to this point is maybe perhaps far more important than what we just see on G-Day at Saturday.
Yeah, but I think you bring up a good point about the validity of it all. Who are the players that we've heard the most about from the springtime, and can they prove what we've been hearing all along? I think we just go right off the top and start out with a strong one, and that's Ellis Robinson, because clearly there's a position battle going on at cornerback between him, Daniel Harris, and DeMello Jones. I think last year the issue with Ellis Robinson was everybody's wondering why you're not going to put in a 5-star who's one of the highest rated recruits that you signed, but I don't think that Ellis Robinson's size was on par with what Kirby Smart and the rest of his staff wanted it to be. I just don't think that he was big enough for the standard, but now that he's had time to work out the way that UGA trains people and get his body right, he's got a chance to earn the starting spot. I think if he can showcase on Saturday that he can go head-to-head with the guys that have a bigger frame, like the Noah Thomases and the Colby Youngs, it won't just be DawgNation that's excited, but I think it's also good for Kirby Smart to see that.
Yeah, with Ellis, I don't know that he was ready to play winning football last year for Georgia. He's excellent in coverage. Wide receivers, like Noah Thomas said, just straight up, he's a problem, and he's very sticky in coverage. But I think there are two things that he needs to work on this offseason to really cement himself as a starting caliber cornerback in the SEC. One is tackling. This is something that Kirby Smart harped on over and over and over again last season, even with Julian Humphrey and Daniel Harris. But I think you could also take that to Ellis Robinson. So I think part of that comes to being more physical. The other is just the mental aspect, the mental toughness needed to go out there and play the cornerback position. After the Mississippi State game last year, Kirby Smart was making a plea to Ellis, like, hey, show us that you can go out there, practice at an elite level, and then we'll go out there and play you. And whether it be an injury, which he declined to go into detail on, or making the plays at practice, I think the mental toughness aspect of Ellis is something that he's spent a lot of time working on this offseason. And in talking to people around the program, it seems like the light has come on for Ellis in the last two scrimmages, the last 2 real weeks of spring practice. It seems like he's a guy that recognizes the opportunity in front of him and has really made a push. Now, it's a very deep cornerback room. You've got guys like Daniel Harris, who started last season, DeMello Jones, as well as someone to monitor. But with Dalen Everett limited because of a hernia injury, I think Saturday is just a massive opportunity for Ellis Robinson, not so much because of what he does in coverage. I think that's where he's going to get a lot of attention, but how he does in coming up and playing the run and being physical in that regard, I think is going to be very telling for his future here at the University of Georgia.
So one thing to note too, and we could probably say that about all the guys that we're going to mention, is the things that Kirby Smart has said about this particular group is, because he obviously doesn't give too much away about specific players, but with all of them mentions their want to compete. And I think that applies so much to Ellis because he didn't get to see the field last year, even though a lot of people expected him to. So I don't think that the competitor aspect is an issue. So it's good to hear that the mental toughness is coming to light for him.
Yeah, and I just think it is a mindset that is needed. And he spoke to reporters this week about having to be patient, about not getting everything that he wanted out of his freshman season. You see what Jeremiah Smith does at Ohio State, becoming an instant impact guy, maybe perhaps the best offensive player on their national championship team. Ellis Robinson routinely went up against Jeremiah Smith in the recruiting circuit and got the better of him more often than not. And Smith is the only player in the country last year that was ranked higher than Robinson. The guy ranked one spot below Robinson in recruiting rankings was DJ Lagway, who some have crowned already as the best quarterback in college football entering the 2025 season. So you can understand why Ellis maybe thinks that he should go ahead and get out there and play on the field just because of the ability that he has. But I think his path to the field is a little bit different, especially in a room that is as loaded as Georgia's cornerback room is. And this spring, I think, has been really, really helpful for him in that regard.
So let's move on to the only freshman that we're going to use in this topic of discussion, and that's Bo Walker. The Robinsons are out. Cash Jones is a third down back. The only opposition at this point is Chauncey Bowens and Dwight Phillips Jr. I think that Bo Walker finds himself in a similar position as Nate Frazier last year, where there's so much injury, so there is more opportunity. But the thing about Bo Walker is that he's had more time at Georgia, because Nate Frazier didn't come in until after the spring. Bo's had more time than Nate did. So if Bo can run against the ones on defense and make some sort of headway, I think Georgia's got a lot more security as a backup to Frazier.
Yeah, Georgia has a real desire to find a number 2 running back. I think we all think Nate Frazier is going to be a special talent here. We are filling in DawgNation Daily. We do have to push Brandon Stock and Nate Frazier a little bit here, but I actually think I'm much more interested in seeing what we see out of Bo Walker. He is not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy in that running back room, but he has a very well-rounded skill set. And I'm interested in seeing how that translates to Georgia. And, you talk about the Robinsons. I think health is such an important thing at that running back position. If he's able to be durable and he's able to be out there on the field, he's clearly got the talent to help this team this season. So Georgia has a very obvious need to find sort of a complement running back to Nate Frazier. I'm sure we'll talk about Cash Jones later on in the show, but I think Cash has a very defined role as a pass catcher, as a third down type running back. They're going to need someone to spell Frazier on early downs here as well. And I think Walker has the opportunity to do that. I'm not saying he's going to run for 670 yards like Nate Frazier did a season ago, leading Georgia in that category. But I think because of his well-roundedness, I think that's going to help him make an easy adjustment to that running back room and fill in a lot of different ways. Because when Nate first got here last year, the thing that we heard about him, it wasn't his running ability that he needed to pick up on. He obviously did that incredibly well. It was his pass blocking, his ball security. Those are the things that Nate needed to improve on. Bo Walker is already ahead of Nate Frazier in those categories. And while he might not be as naturally gifted as a runner as Nate Frazier, I think his all-around skill set is something that I'm interested in seeing this Saturday, and how that translates to helping the Georgia offense come this 2025 season.
And too, in going back to listening what Kirby Smart had to say about Bo Walker this far, he mentions the good instincts, how coachable he is, which apparently has been an issue this spring. So that's a Kirby Smart kind of guy. And on the Cash Jones thing, there is a very solid chance that somehow comes up later in our conversation. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. The outside linebacker room is one of the position groups that has a really big question mark, because Chaz Chambliss is now gone, Damon's transferred, Gabe Harris is hurt, but sometimes the case is like injury opens the door for other guys. We heard a lot about Quintavious Johnson this time last year, maybe not as much this spring. And when Kirby was talking about Q, he said, I want him to be ahead of where he is, and he's not. I think a good G-Day performance can help him make those strides to where Kirby wants him to be.
Availability is the best ability, and that's the case in this outside linebacker room. Gabe Harris not going to play on Saturday as he recovers from labrum surgery. We'll see what Isaiah Gibson looks like. He's been dealing with an injury for spring practice. So at this outside linebacker position where they ask their guys to do a lot of different things, I think Quintavious is a guy that has a chance to go out there and show his versatile skill set, a little bit similar to Bo Walker in that regard. But you look back at Georgia's outside linebackers over recent years, Chaz Chambliss, Nolan Smith, those guys had the ability to do a lot of different things for this Georgia defense. And I think Quintavious does as well. Nolan and Chaz were guys that had been able to develop over the course of years before emerging as that sort of number one guy at that position. Quintavious hasn't been afforded that same luxury because of the guys that had transferred out. I think had Damon Wilson stayed, this would be a guy who we'd really be talking about as a potential impact player for Georgia. But now with Quintavious, it's not even so much whether or not he can make an impact, but just seeing what all can he do this Saturday for Georgia at that edge, at that outside linebacker position. There's obviously a lot of young talent behind him. We mentioned Isaiah Gibson earlier, Chase Litton, Darren Akinabon as well were highly rated guys in the 2025 recruiting cycle. But Quintavious has that experience. I think the fact that he played on special teams last season is big for him. It gave him a taste, and it shows that the coaching staff trusts him. Again, I'm not expecting Quintavious to go out there to have 2 sacks and to be a terror off the edge, but can he do all the little things that Georgia traditionally asks of their outside linebackers? And if he's able to do that, I think you feel somewhat better about what Georgia has at the outside linebacker position, because with the transfer portal opening up next week, we expect edge rusher, outside linebacker to be a position where they really look at guys and see who can come in and potentially help us there. And so I think this is a big spring for Quintavious, and I think G-Day allows him to put a punctuation mark on, hey, I'm a guy, even if I'm not necessarily the starter or the number one option at this position, I can give Georgia real snaps there this year.
No, I could not agree more. I think a decent performance from Quintavious Johnson not only makes you feel better about what you've got in him as a player, but in a position group where we just don't know that much about what's going to happen with that group. So I'm with you on that. Let's talk about Noah Thomas, Justin Tell's favorite player. No, the player that he thinks is going to be the best on the team. Sorry, let me correct myself. So I think that you can make the argument that all the wide receivers that they've brought in have a chance to better position themselves. But I'm not sure if there's been any other wide receiver apart from maybe Talon Taylor, who we'll also touch on later, that has been hyped up as much as Noah Thomas. But here's the thing. Georgia's brought in transfers that are wide receivers from the past that maybe haven't lived up to that hype. When it comes to Noah Thomas, all we hear about is that 6-foot size. But at the G-Day, I want to see him be able to get those 50-50 balls in contention because Georgia was really lacking in that department last year.
Kaylee, he's not 6 foot. There's a huge difference between 6 foot and 6'4". And his size, I think, is so important.
He's listed at 6'5", and that's what I said.
And you said 6 foot. And so I think Noah Thomas, again, we saw Colby Young at G-Day last year and sort of marveled at his size. And because of his off-field arrest, he didn't get a chance to really show that over the full course of the 2024 season. With Noah Thomas, he's a guy that comes in with SEC experience. He's worked with James Coley before in his time at Texas A&M, and getting a chance to talk to him. And again, it's a very small sample size, but he seems like to have the same kind of mindset that you need to be here at Georgia to be successful. So I think with Noah, again, I don't know who's going to be the number one receiver at G-Day in terms of statistical production. I know that they're going to make things difficult out there. They're going to try a lot of deep passes, and I think his size might help him in that regard. But with Noah Thomas, you just want to see them have another body out there that really impacts that offense, because last season they're asking Dylan Bell to be out there at that outside, that X wide receiver position, and that's just something he wasn't totally comfortable with, and I don't think, quite frankly, best suited his skill sets. And so when you have someone like Noah Thomas, who is 6'4" and brings that physicality to the position, I think it's going to make things a lot easier for whoever ends up being Georgia's starting quarterback.
Yeah, all 6'5" of him. I agree. Let's talk about one of the Branch brothers. We talked a lot about Zachariah, but I think that the one that can really make some headway in the position battle is Zion Branch. There's been position battles that have been occurring, but perhaps the one that we know the least about what's going on is the safety position, because there are so many guys competing for that spot, whether it's him, Adrian Maddox, Jaden Harris, Kyron Jones, and then you've got the stars as well. I think that Zion has a chance to find himself in maybe not like a starting role, but somebody who can really get in the mix, because with his size, he can not only play safety, but also in that star position as well. So, I think the biggest thing that he can do for himself at G-Day is show that versatility and the quickness to adapt.
Yeah, I think with Zion, in a similar way we talked about Noah Thomas and the size that he brings to this team, in that secondary, Zion Branch brings a physicalness that, even though there are more experienced guys back there who I would expect to start, Ja'Cory Thomas at safety, Janelle Aguero at star, his size makes things different for Georgia, and especially against teams that might want to run the ball and be physical in that regard, you can see him helping out in that regard. He's one of 3 transfers that they've brought in the secondary, Adrian Maddox, Jaden Harris being the other 2. And I think there's just such an unknown about what Georgia is going to do at that safety and star position that I think that's where the intrigue with Zion Branch comes in. I fully believe that he is a guy Georgia would have taken even if he was not related to wide receiver Zachariah Branch. And because of his skill set and because of his upside, I think injuries were a reason he didn't fully live up to that in his time at USC. If he's able to get on the field and stay on the field, I think that there's something here for Georgia in a way that can help him. Again, I don't know if he's going to be a starter or not for Georgia this season. But because of his tools, I'm interested in seeing how he goes about helping Georgia. And I think G-Day on Saturday is the first real chance that Georgia fans are going to have to see what he can do and how many different types of hats he can wear in Georgia's secondary.
And too, from what we've heard about him from Kirby Smart, he's definitely someone that's doing everything that he can to get on the field, whether it's extra study, extra film, or more recovery. Like, I definitely think that the Branch brothers came to Georgia to compete and be a part of that culture. So I'm really excited to see what Zion's going to bring to the table. In just a minute, we're going to talk about all the newcomers that we're most excited to see, whether that be transfers or freshmen. But first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation at Large, we are brought to you by Zagoria Law Firm. And what we love about Zagoria Law Firm is that they are the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people bitten by dogs, as well as those who have been knocked down by dogs. That's right, dog fans. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, make sure to give them a call at 833-GA-DOG-BITE, that's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. Now with that, we'll do dog bites. All right, let's start it off strong. What Noah Thomas has been to Jeff Sentell is what Elijah Griffin has been to Connor Riley. When Georgia signs a top 10, 5-star defensive lineman, naturally there's going to be a lot of excitement. And then on top of that, we've heard so many people come forth about how excited they are about Elijah Griffin. I think that what KJ or Ellis was to everyone last year and the hype around them, that's what Elijah Griffin is to this 2025 class.
I'm just telling you right now, there's no way that the hype that we have heard about Elijah Griffin gets validated on Saturday in G-Day. And so I do want to pump the brakes a little bit as a conductor of the Elijah Griffin hype train with that regard. And G-Day is just not made for defensive linemen to go out there and really be difference makers and make a big impact out there. But he is a guy, again, with every highly rated guy, and I know Kirby Smart talked about it this week, I'm not comparing him to Jalen Carter. I've always felt that was an unfair comparison that was foisted on him, not by a media member, mind you, but by Warren Brinson, a former Georgia player who knows Griffin very well. I think with Griffin, again, it's the tools, it's the upside, and the physicality that he comes in with. I think that sets him up. Again, I don't think he's going to be Georgia's best defensive lineman this coming season, but I do think he's got the ability to come in and make an impact right away on a defensive line position that Georgia is often, when it's at its best, is because it has a strong defensive line. And so seeing what Griffin might be able to do and help Georgia in that regard this season, I think is very exciting. I think we'll get our first taste of that on Saturday on G-Day.
So your official title is conductor of the hype train and not president of the Elijah Griffin fan club yet?
Correct.
Okay, when do we get to president of the fan club status?
He's got to be a little bit older and develop as a prospect before we run for official candidacy.
That's fine. A player that maybe I would like to be a conductor of their hype train is Elias Williams, because when you have a team of D1 athletes where everybody's just kind of built different, and then you look on the field and you see a tight end who is 6'7" and stands out amongst the rest of all those D1 athletes. At this point, I'm just excited to see him in person. And two, I'm curious to see how Georgia is going to utilize him, whether that's in the tight end role or maybe even some receiver. I'm just excited to see that versatility that we've heard so much about and that I got the chance to see last year when I got to watch him play.
Yeah, his size is just so different, I think, from what Georgia currently has in that tight end room. But I am interested in seeing Elias because I don't know how much we're going to see of him during his freshman season, because that tight end room is just loaded. Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky don't need a whole lot from them this spring game. Jaden Riddell is a guy I'm really interested in seeing what he can go out and do. There's been a lot of positive buzz around him. And even the same can be said with Ethan Barbora. Now he's really hit the ground running here at Georgia. But I think with Elias, again, Kaylee, you mentioned his size, 6'7". He's a more natural receiver than Darnell Washington. And because of that size, I think you might hear a lot of comparisons there. He is a much, I think, more fluid athlete than Washington was, but at the same point in time does not possess the raw size. I think he's listed at 6'7", 250. Darnell was a good bit bigger than that and carried that a lot more. So I'm interested in seeing, especially from a tight end perspective, how physical is Elias Williams? How is he developed as a blocker? Because he's got the size to play on the outside, But Georgia also has more developed guys in Noah Thomas, in Colby Young, who I think can play that outside receiver spot as well.
It just honestly feels unfair to everyone else that Georgia has Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, and Jaden Riddell in their room, and then on top of that, you're going to bring in a 6'7" tight end like Elias Williams. Like, it's absolutely nothing. Let's talk about the other branch. Former 5-star. So when people hear that, of course, the hype train's going to go up, and then on top of that, you have people from ESPN saying that he's going to be like a swing player for this team and help increase the talent that you have in the wide receiver room. And at least for me, like, I'm excited to see the speed, because Arian was the speed guy last year. I think that's what Zach Branch can be to this group. So how fast is he actually, and how fast has he kind of adjusted to the Georgia speed of things?
Yeah, Arian, a world-class track athlete. I think with Zachariah, again, his play speed is incredible. And so I'll be interested in seeing how Georgia uses him. Do they bring him on a lot of crossers underneath? How developed is he as a wide receiver? Because I think you saw Arian get a lot better at that over the course of last season. Drops were obviously an issue there for Arian. And I think the success of Arian Smith, who had over 800 yards receiving a season ago, I think is part of the reason Georgia was able to land Zachariah Branch. And so if Zachariah can match his hands with his speed and his natural gifts, again, he was the number 1 ranked wide receiver in the 2023 recruiting class. This guy has a lot of talent. I'm interested in seeing how Georgia not only goes about unlocking it, but using that at the next level and adding to their offense, and something that, while yes, Arian was able to stretch the field, Georgia wasn't always able to best tap into that. And so if Georgia can do that with Zachariah Branch this season, I think it's going to help elevate the offense around whoever the quarterback ends up being.
This next one is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be Talon Taylor. And honestly, I think that most Georgia fans are just excited to look on the field and see a whole new crop of wide receivers. But, I mean, it's the first 5-star wide receiver Georgia signed since George Pickens. And I think that after last year, you see Jeremiah Smith break out for Ohio State, Ryan Williams for Alabama, Cam Coleman for Auburn. Everybody's kind of looking around like, okay, well, where's Georgia's star freshman receiver? And even though Talon Taylor may not go on to be that, just because he might not have that much playing time from everybody that they've brought in, a guy like this is going to bring a lot of hype with him. So I'm excited to see how they get him into the mix tomorrow.
Yeah, it's encouraging that Taylor's the 3rd wide receiver we've spoken about on our show so far today. And I'm curious just to see what sort of he carves out. He's got better size than I think maybe people anticipate. And he's such a well-rounded wide receiver prospect. Again, he doesn't have one necessarily standout trait, but he does everything so well. And so I think that's going to help him in his time at Georgia. But again, you mentioned Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch, Talon Taylor. The returning guys, I think, are poised to have strong days, whether it be a London Humphreys, a Sokovie White. There's a lot of options at wide receiver on Saturday, and I think no more position group am I excited to go out there and see just where they are and what that talent level looks like than wide receiver, especially given the issues that they had at that spot last year.
All right, last one. Let's touch on an offensive lineman. Jeff Sutton-Tell and I actually talked a lot about Juan Gaston on Before the Hedges last night. He's the highest rated offensive line signing the 2025 class. 6'7", listed at 360 pounds. I mean, an absolute unit. But the weight will go down over time as he starts getting in more shape. But I think you said earlier that availability is the best availability. Is that how it went?
Availability is the best ability.
There it is. That applies to him in this situation, because there's been a lot of injury on the offensive line and a really mediocre performance from that group last year. So this is really, truly someone that can find himself sort of in that rotation. So I think I'm excited to see how much he actually gets to play tomorrow. Saturday.
Yeah, injuries were such an issue for Georgia's offensive line a year ago, and they sort of continue to be this spring. Drew Bobo misses time with a hyperextended knee. Daniel Calhoun suffers a foot injury. Ernest Green is dealing with a hand injury. Monroe Freeling misses all of spring with labrum surgery. So, this unit did not have, I think, the spring they wanted to from a health standpoint. But one of the bright spots has been the development of Juan Gaston and how he has come in and played right away. I think, again, what you see from Gaston on Saturday and how he plays and how he looks, he's going to look different when Georgia takes the field against Marshall on August 30th. He has to continue to reshape his body and get his weight down. I know he's listed at 360. I think he might have been at times closer to 380. in these first couple of months at Georgia, and they're hoping to get him down to 340 pounds. And 340, 335, I think that's where you want him playing, because you have to be able to move and play on the outside against elite defensive linemen like he's going to see. We haven't seen a true starter on the offensive line as a true freshman really since Cade Mays back in 2018. If you want to go back even further, really Andrew Thomas in that regard in 2017 at the tackle spot. I'm not saying Gaston's going to be able to do that, because I do think Georgia likes what they have in Monroe Freeling and Ernest Green. But I think Saturday is a massive opportunity for Gaston, simply because he's available and able to show that he can go out there and do some things for Georgia at that offensive tackle spot.
So we got the chance to mention a lot of newcomers, but there's definitely one that's going to hit that we missed out on. So I'm excited to circle back to next week's episode and to see who that person was that kind of got left out, or, you know, maybe had that big performance. So in just a moment, we are going to do our favorite tweets from the week. I think ours might kind of be like semi-related. But first, want to give a shout out to Royal Caribbean. It is mind-baffling to me that here in less than 2 weeks now, maybe a week and a half, we're actually going to be leaving on the DawgNation cruise. I have been so excited. I have been getting prepared. But I have mostly been thinking a lot about Coco Cay. That was definitely my favorite part of the entire cruise last year, just getting to hang out on the island with all dogs fans. There's really so much to do, whether you're an adult and you want to go to the hideaway side and just be with the adults, or if you have kids and you want to go to the water park. Like, I could have spent just a whole week here alone. I think it's worth going on a Royal Caribbean cruise just so you can experience Perfect Day Coco Cay, because it is their private island. That's how you've got to get there. And I know that they've made a lot of improvements and have expanded on the island, so I'm excited to see what that looks like. Even if you couldn't join us on the DawgNation cruise, you should go on your own, especially now that the weather's going to be really nice for the rest of the spring and the summer, or even this fall. And if you want to, you can contact Jay Slater at dreamvacations.com. Again, that's Jay Slater at dreamvacations.com to find out how you can learn more about Perfect Day Coco Cay and finding your own Royal Caribbean cruise to go on. So this is the part of the show where we do our favorite tweets of the week. We usually do it with our good friend Cody Chaffins, but he is on spring break this week, so it's just Connor and myself today on Meme Machine.
Who's that going down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a Meme Machine and Red Black. It's a Meme Machine and Red Black. Go, no!
So I have to tell you that the one that I initially wanted to pick had nothing to do with sports, not football, not basketball, not anything related. Because I saw it and it reminded me of you. I didn't pick it, but it was one. It was like a meme that said, "Be patient with me. I'm from the 1900s," and I wanted to use that in honor of you today.
Wow.
But I just figured, you know, since we're kind of in the prime time spot, got to do something that's sports related. But I just wanted to let you know that you're on my mind when I saw that. So I'll go ahead and go first. Yeah, I look up to you. Now listen, they don't make rom-coms like this anymore, and to kind of put a pin in all the basketball talk we've been doing, this is the Duke coach. And instead of Matthew McConaughey, it's him on how to lose a game in 10 minutes. It was like the worst slow burn at the end that I've ever seen. And so bring back better rom-coms, and also congratulations to whoever put this together. It was perfect.
Just, and I'm going to go in a similar vein here with my meme, but a brutal loss for Duke. And I think they have to feel even worse having watched what happened on not just Monday night when Houston blew it against Florida in a similar fashion, but also with the White Lotus season finale. Obviously, the Duke, North Carolina aspect of it all taking place. And then when Duke was blowing that game, I think if you were on social media, you all saw the same image of Tim Ratliff in a Duke shirt doing a certain thing that I don't necessarily know we could play on here, so that's why I didn't share it. But yeah, just a tough weekend for Duke. Great weekend for White Lotus.
Yes.
And that show, thoroughly entertained by it. Had a great time with those characters. Mike White, I cannot wait to see what you cook up next time around. Hopefully something better than whatever Duke cooked up at the end of that loss against Houston.
A few things on this. Number one, I wonder if Mike White even knew that things were just going to line up at the perfect time and the monster that he created. Second thing, everybody knew that the White Lotus meme was coming as soon as Duke lost. I knew it was going to be everywhere when I opened up my phone, but every single one was still hilarious. And last thing, I wish we could have got one more extended cut scene that they filmed right after the Duke game with Tim finding out that Duke had lost, just to only add more to the crash out that he had been having all season long. So that is a meme. Speaking of memes, that is going to be around for a very long time. And I don't know if Mike White did that intentionally or not, but it couldn't have come at a more perfect time.
Duke fans watching that game were all like, Cooper, no!
When Duke loses, everybody wins. So in just a moment, we are going to do our G-Day fantasy draft that I've probably put a little bit much time and research into, but that's okay. But want to remind you guys that, hey, on Saturday, we're going to be doing a ton of stuff at the bookstore. I'll be doing my DawgNation game day show. Mike Griffith's going to be there to join me starting at 11 o'clock. So come visit us. And also, too, another reason to go to the bookstore on Saturday is they're doing autograph signings. It's Dan Jackson and Buck Bellew, and it's going to be from 10 to 12. So come take a look at all the gear, get your autograph signed, come by, say hello to Mike and myself. It's a really special opportunity because you get to see two Georgia legends, and then, maybe get to help with pregame. And then after the game, of course, Brandon Adams will be there for the DawgNation post-game show. So definitely tune into that one, especially if you can't come to the game. That might be your only source of everything that happens. So if you're in Athens on Saturday, come to the bookstore before the game, get your autograph signed, come to hang out, and get some really good gear. Okay. I lost last year. I'm coming with a vengeance. It is our G-Day fantasy draft. Because I lost last year, I'm giving you the opportunity to decide, would you like to pick first or would you like to go second? Because we'll snake draft it. So take your chances.
I want pick numbers 2 and 3.
You want number 2 and 3. That's fine.
Okay.
Let me pull out my list because I've got backups.
What are the rules? Clarify the rules.
Okay, so here we go.
Home.
That's good. I was ready to jump in and get ahead. So the G-Day fantasy draft, Cody will end up adding all the points when he comes back. No quarterbacks. Neither of us are going to take a quarterback this year because it usually does end up being in favor of quarterback number 2, who's going against number 2 defense. So we're eliminating that this year. Then we're going to take 3 offensive players and 1 defensive player. And that's it, right? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So I learned from my good friend Mr. Fromm that you got to take the under the radar guys. Like you were talking about earlier, how there's guys that have these great G-Day performances and then it doesn't really foreshadow what they're going to do in the future. And this has nothing to do with the Northwest Georgia bias that Connor is definitely about to bring up when I tell you that I'm taking Sokobe White with my number 1 pick.
Had a touchdown in last year's game, was on my board. I think that this is a good pick. I like what Sokobe can do. A guy who's had a strong spring, I think, is going to play on both teams, and I think that's going to help his chances this coming Saturday.
All right, Connor. 2 and 3.
2 and 3. We're going to go with Dylan Bell. I think you're going to see him work at wide receiver and running back. I think that's going to get him some extra touches there. Pick. And I'm excited to see how he goes out. And then he's not going to be here if I wait any longer. So give me Cash Jones.
Dang it.
I think he's gonna catch a lot of passes. I think that's gonna help him in that regard. We'll see what he does as a rusher. I worry that maybe I left Bo Walker on the board, but quite frankly, I think from a running back perspective, it's more important what you do as a pass catcher in this game than necessarily as a pure runner. So I'm gonna take Dylan Bell and I'm gonna take Cash Jones there as my 2 offensive guys.
Dylan Bell, didn't have that on my board. Think that's a great pick just because they can do a little bit of everything. Cash Jones, if I would have had picks 2 and 3 and you would have had 1, I would have definitely taken Cash in that route. I mean, he's always a G-Day star. Always has been, always will be. So I'm going to take Bo Walker with my next one. I feel like this is somebody that can also run with the 1s and 2s. Here's where it gets tough, is taking your 3rd skill player. It's tough with the wide receiver or the tight end room. I'm going to go with Jaden Riddell. Oscar Dell, Lawson Lucky have already kind of established themselves. This is really Jaden Riddell time. I'm hoping that he's going to catch a lot of passes and that they're going to try to get the ball to him to see if he's caught up to speed. So give me Jaden Riddell.
I like that pick a lot. It was probably going to be my pick had he not come off the board there. So a solid pick. I'm going to take Colby Young. I'm going to take a wide receiver on the outside. I think they might try and get him reintegrated after missing so much time last season. He's got some size to him. He's got, I think, a connection with Gunnar Stockton. He was practicing with the team last December, and so I think that's helped in that regard. So give me Colby Young And then on the defensive side of the ball, you go a number of different directions here. I'm going to pick a guy that I think is going to be around the football a lot. I am going to take Jonel Aguero. I think he's going to rack up some tackles. I think he might get some hands on some passes. And give me Jonel Aguero as my defensive player to round things out.
I like the Colby Young pick a lot. I had him as one of my alternates in case you took any of my big picks. So I think definitely we see eye to eye on a lot of these things. Honestly, I think because you have so many options for skill players and offensive players, it actually makes the defensive person tougher, especially because you only get one, and you don't really want to get that one wrong. I like the route of going with Janelle. The two on my board were actually KJ and Ja'Cory Thomas. I feel like I would be stupid not to take KJ, just somebody who's going to be in the middle. I know that he's already sort of solidified his position, but I still see him getting out there a lot. So I'm going to take KJ.
I'd point out, I don't think you took a true first-team offensive player in your selections. And maybe you were listening a little too closely to Jake Fromm and discounting what those number one guys on the Georgia offensive side of the ball might be able to do on Saturday.
He was not the only person that I consulted about this. If you think that I just have one source, you're tripping. So, all right. I think that is it. Do you have anything else that you want to add that we missed out on G-Day coverage-wise?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the quarterbacks here. I'm excited to see what Gunnar Stockton and Ryan Puglisi do. We got a chance to talk to Ryan this week. I think if he had been eligible to be drafted, I think you would have taken Ryan with the number one pick. But I'm interested in seeing what these guys go out there and do and how they go out and play, because while everyone I think assumes that Gunnar is going to be the starting quarterback, and I still do believe he will be Georgia's starter on August 30th against Marshall, I'm interested in seeing how both those guys go out and play, because it does seem like they've had a healthy competition this spring.
And two, I think at least for me, even though it does feel like time has kind of gone by quick in some ways, I'm just excited to have football back, even if it's G-Day and it's not like an actual game, just to be in Sanford Stadium with people who love football and people who are just excited to have that back. Like, I'm grateful for that experience. So that's going to be it today for myself and Connor on DawgNation at Large. We'll see you right back here next Thursday at 7 o'clock.